The early morning sun bathed the highway in a soft golden glow, and the traffic was light. In the stillness of the moment, as cars and trucks whizzed by, a small creature moved slowly across the pavement. Its shell, rough and weathered from years in the wild, caught the light, almost blending into the roadside. The tortoise, completely unaware of the speed and danger around it, was on its way somewhere, perhaps to a favorite sunning spot or a new stretch of vegetation. But this wasn't its natural home. It had somehow ended up on the highway, a deadly stretch of asphalt that cut through its habitat like a scar. The road, normally a place for speeding vehicles, had become the tortoise's perilous path. Cars sped past, some barely noticing the small, slow-moving creature. But one driver did notice. A woman in her late 30s, Megan, was heading to work when she saw the tortoise in her lane, its slow, deliberate movement defying the rush of the world around it. The first instinct was to swerve, but that was dangerous. Her car could end up in the ditch, or worse. So, she slowed down, her heart racing a little, unsure what to do. It wasn't every day you saw a tortoise on a highway. She drove by it, and then something inside her clicked. She couldn't just keep driving. Megan pulled her car over to the side of the road, her mind racing with the idea that this small creature might not survive long in the path of speeding vehicles. The thought of it getting squashed by the next car to come along made her feel uneasy. She hesitated for a moment, looking down the road to ensure there was no oncoming traffic before getting out of her car. Megan approached the tortoise slowly, crouching down to inspect it. The creature seemed to be in a state of confusion, its large, wrinkled eyes darting around but showing no real fear. Megan could see that it wasn't just any tortoise, it was a desert tortoise, a species that needed specific conditions to survive. She looked around, seeing nothing but the wide, open expanse of desert on either side of the highway. There were no signs indicating that this particular stretch of road led to a desert preserve or any natural habitat. It was a busy, bustling part of town, an area where the tortoise clearly didn't belong. Her heart ached for the tortoise. It wasn't its fault it had ended up on this road, but Megan knew that if she didn't do something, this would be the tortoise's last journey. She carefully reached out, gently picking it up. It didn't struggle, which told her it was either exhausted or too confused to react. She placed it inside her car, carefully setting it on the passenger seat, securing it with her seatbelt. The creature's head poked out, looking up at her with what seemed like quiet curiosity. Megan's mind raced as she drove, wondering what she could do. Where could she take this tortoise? She had no experience with reptiles, let alone with desert tortoises. Should she call a wildlife center or take it to the nearest vet? The problem, as she would later realize, was that this wasn't a simple rescue. There was more at stake than simply saving a tortoise from a highway. As she drove toward the edge of town, her thoughts were interrupted by the tortoise's unexpected behavior. It began to move around the seat, pushing against the seatbelt with surprising force, as though trying to escape. Megan glanced down at it, a smile tugging at her lips despite the urgency of the situation. The tortoise was strong, and it was clear that it wasn't giving up. As she passed the town's edge, she turned onto a road that led deeper into the desert, away from the bustling urban world. Megan began to feel a sense of relief. She knew she wasn't just driving it to safety, she was taking it to the wild, back to where it belonged. But the question still lingered: would the tortoise survive being so far from its natural home, so disoriented by the trauma of the highway? Megan drove for what felt like an eternity, the desert stretching out before her in all its rugged, unforgiving beauty. The tortoise had quieted down, now resting peacefully in the seat. Still, Megan couldn't shake the feeling that this journey, this rescue, was just the beginning. She didn't know what lay ahead for the tortoise, but she was determined to find out. By the time Megan reached the desert's edge, she could see the wilds opening up before her, but she knew there was more to the story than just a simple release. She stopped the car and looked at the tortoise one last time before getting out. The sun was setting as Megan stood by the side of her car, gazing out at the vast expanse of desert before her. The landscape seemed endless, stretching for miles with only the occasional spiny cactus or scraggly bush to break up the monotony. This was the tortoise's world, but she still felt a pang of doubt. Was she doing the right thing? Was this really the best place to release it? She glanced at the tortoise, still resting in the passenger seat. It had settled into a quiet, almost meditative state, its slow, rhythmic breathing matching the calmness of the surrounding desert. Megan's thoughts raced as she crouched beside the car, carefully lifting the tortoise out of the seat. She could feel the warmth of its shell, the roughness of its surface, and the weight of responsibility that seemed to hang in the air. Megan had done her best to get the tortoise out of harm's way, but what if she wasn't equipped to care for it properly? She wasn't a wildlife expert, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this little creature was now depending on her, not just for survival, but for its very future. She had to make sure it found its way back to a place where it could thrive, where it could continue its slow, steady life in the desert. As she set the tortoise gently on the ground, it seemed to hesitate for a moment, its eyes scanning the vast desert around it. Megan stepped back, watching in silence. The tortoise didn't move right away, almost as if it was considering the strange new world before it. She watched as it stretched its legs slowly, testing the ground with its sturdy feet. After a few moments, the tortoise began to move, its head extending out of its shell and its legs shifting in a slow, deliberate pace. Megan let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. But then, as the tortoise moved a little farther into the desert, Megan's phone rang. She pulled it from her pocket, her heart skipping a beat as she checked the caller ID. It was her brother, Alex, calling her for the third time that morning. Megan had been so distracted by the rescue that she hadn't had the chance to return his calls, but now, she couldn't ignore him any longer. "Hey, Alex," Megan said, picking up the phone, her voice a little quieter than usual. "Megan, where are you? I've been calling all morning. You still planning on coming over later? Mom and Dad are waiting for you for dinner. What's going on?" Megan paused, looking back at the tortoise, now moving slowly across the dusty earth. "Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, I had to do something. I'll be there in a little while." Her voice trailed off, as she wrestled with her thoughts. Her brother's voice softened. "What are you talking about? You sound a little off. Everything okay?" Megan glanced down at the tortoise, watching it continue its journey toward the wilds of the desert. "I found a tortoise on the highway this morning. It was in danger, so I'm releasing it here. I think it's safe now, but I don't know." For a moment, there was silence on the other end of the line. Megan's brother, usually quick with a joke, didn't respond right away. Finally, he said, "Megan, that's kind of amazing. Are you sure this is where it's supposed to be?" Megan took a deep breath, watching the tortoise's steady progress across the sand. "I think so. This is its home. It's just a little disoriented, but I think it knows what it's doing." She was about to say more, when the tortoise turned its head in her direction, its large, dark eyes locking with hers. There was something almost knowing in its gaze, as though it understood what she had done for it, as though it was thanking her without words. "I'm going to head back soon," Megan said softly into the phone, her voice filled with wonder. "But I think this tortoise will be okay." Alex chuckled from the other end. "I guess I'll have to hear more about this over dinner. You're a wildlife hero now, huh?" Megan smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest that had nothing to do with the desert sun. "Maybe," she said, "maybe I am." As she ended the call, Megan watched the tortoise slowly navigate the desert landscape, its every step deliberate and calculated. The way it moved felt like a quiet declaration of survival, a creature who had lived for so long in the harsh, unyielding world of the desert, now returning to it after a brief encounter with the human world. But as she watched the tortoise, Megan also began to feel the weight of another truth. This rescue wasn't just about helping a creature cross a dangerous highway. It was about something bigger, about the delicate balance between nature and the encroaching world of human civilization. There were many more roads like this one, stretching across the desert, cutting through ecosystems, disrupting the natural world. It wasn't just one tortoise who needed saving, it was an entire way of life, a fragile world that needed to be protected. Megan watched as the tortoise continued its slow journey, the horizon stretching out before it like a promise. There was something about the tortoise's quiet persistence that filled her with hope. Despite all the threats it faced, it was still moving forward. It was still surviving. Her heart swelled with pride. She had done what she could for this tortoise, but she knew that the real work had just begun. The desert was a vast and dangerous place, and the tortoise would need more than just her kindness to thrive. It would need protection, habitat, and time. things that only the larger efforts of people and organizations could offer. And that was where Megan's journey truly began. Megan stood for a while, watching the tortoise continue its slow trek across the desert sands. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows that stretched across the barren land. The world felt quiet and still, as though the desert itself was holding its breath, allowing the tortoise to find its place in the wild once more. But Megan couldn't shake the feeling that this moment wasn't just about the tortoise, it was about something deeper. She had taken the first step to helping this creature, but what if her efforts weren't enough? What if the desert, as vast and beautiful as it was, wasn't enough for it anymore? The highway was one of many dangers that sliced through this fragile landscape, and Megan knew that the desert itself was changing, encroached upon by human development. How many other tortoises had been displaced or killed by these roads, these human intrusions? The thought nagged at her, but there was nothing to do but let the tortoise continue on its way. She had done what she could. But what Megan didn't know was that the real challenge for this tortoise, and for her, was only just beginning. As the tortoise continued its journey, Megan pulled out her phone again and tapped a number into the screen, her mind still racing. She dialed the local wildlife rescue center and waited as the phone rang. "Wildlife Rescue Center, how can I help?" a calm voice answered. "Hi, I've found a desert tortoise on the highway," Megan explained. "I've released it back into the wild, but I just want to make sure I did the right thing. Can you help me understand what's best for this tortoise? I don't want to just let it wander off into danger." The voice on the other end paused for a moment. "You did the right thing by getting it off the highway," the rescuer said, "but the desert is a tough place for a tortoise, especially one that's been disturbed by humans. We get calls like this all the time, people who find tortoises on highways or in places they don't belong. It's more common than you think. The desert's harsh, and if the tortoise has been displaced, it might be vulnerable." Megan swallowed hard. She had a sudden, intense feeling that she hadn't done enough. She had acted in the moment, but what if her decision had inadvertently put the tortoise in even more danger? "We recommend bringing tortoises into our center when they're found in areas like this," the voice continued. "We can check them over, see if they're injured, and make sure they're fit to return to their natural habitat. If they're not, we have a recovery area where we can rehabilitate them. Sometimes, they've been exposed to diseases or stress, and it takes a bit of time before they can be released back into the wild." Megan felt a knot form in her stomach. "So you think I should have taken it to you instead of releasing it straight into the desert?" "It's hard to say without seeing it. You did the best thing by stopping and helping, but desert tortoises are often vulnerable after being stressed. They might wander into dangerous areas, or worse, they might not be able to find enough food or water." The conversation lingered in Megan's mind, and she realized that although she had done something good, there was still so much more to be done. She wasn't a wildlife expert, but maybe she could help in other ways. She hung up the phone, her heart heavy, but resolute. She turned back to the tortoise, now almost out of sight, its slow, deliberate movements marking its journey through the desert. Megan thought about the bigger picture. If one tortoise could be at risk, then surely others were too. Maybe it was time for her to step up, to find a way to help not just this one, but the many desert tortoises whose homes were being disrupted. Without another thought, Megan walked back to her car, determined. As she drove back toward town, her mind was already working out a plan. She would start by visiting the wildlife center again, getting more involved. She could help raise awareness about desert tortoise conservation, work on projects to protect their natural habitat. Maybe she could even talk to local government officials about better road design, one that took wildlife crossings into account. By the time she reached the highway again, Megan had made up her mind. The tortoise might have returned to the wild, but she had learned a valuable lesson: saving one wasn't enough. The only way to make a lasting difference was to protect the entire species, their habitats, and their future. She glanced over at the spot where she had released the tortoise. The landscape stretched out before her, unchanged. But Megan knew it was a fragile beauty, one that needed to be protected. Her journey had only just begun, and the tortoise, despite all odds, had opened her eyes to a bigger world. A world that needed care, attention, and most of all, people who were willing to act. And so, as she drove off, she made a promise to herself: She would be one of those people. She would make sure that the story of this tortoise, and all the others like it, wasn't forgotten.